Right, morning everyone. Thank you for having me here. As you said, I'm Dan Rossiter from BRE's BIM team. If we can have just a quick bit of calisthenics, hands up anyone who's heard of the BRE. Most of you, fab. Hands up if you haven't heard of us. One or two, and hands up if you didn't put your hand up. No one brave enough? No, that's fine, fab. I'll just do a very quick overview of who the BRE then, I won't spend much time on it. We are the building research establishment. Basically, the way we work is that at top level, we're a charity. We've got the BRE Trust, and they fund research projects into construction. We then look at those, we attempt to turn those into viable tools and services within the industry. Those then help feed money back into the trust to fund further projects. So we have this kind of cyclical approach of doing research, creating tools, and then feeding back up into the system. Our key goal, as you can see, it's slightly cheesy, but our idea is that we want to build a better world together. And we try and do that through products, tools, standards, and qualifications. We do this by having a number of services that we provide, and these include research, innovation, consultancy, testing, certification, and training. Now, we do this through lots of different avenues. Two of the particularly strong ones we do are to do with fire and to do with BREEAM as well. So hopefully you've all, for love it or hate it, been involved with BREEAM in some point or other. But we also focus quite a lot on BIM. We've got a dedicated BIM website, which you're more than welcome to go have a look at, bre.co.uk/BIM, and it has all of our services and what we offer put out on there. A general about page, education, so the training that we do, consultancy services, research projects. We've got a number of interesting ones going on at the moment. I'm working quite a lot with the Environment Agency, looking at some infrastructure work on how we can kind of bring more BIM into infrastructure, which is quite an interesting one. And on a day-to-day basis, I also manage Building Smart UK and Ireland. So if you are members, then fab. If you're not members, feel free to join. There's an interesting organisation looking at open BIM and the idea of interoperability and kind of transparency throughout the industry. But we're not here to talk about the other ones, we're just here to focus on certification. Now, certification is very much of a Marmite kind of subject. There are a lot of people out there who think certification is great. There are a lot of people who think it's just a badge and the idea is you just pay for it and that's it. So people are entitled to their opinions and I can just kind of say what I think, but from BRE, I'm obviously pro-certification. There's a particular reason for that, and the reason I asked the question why we need to certify is actually a point that Tom raised earlier on in his presentation, where he talked about this idea that people can come up to you and say, hey, we can do level 3, pick us for your job. As he plainly said, level 3 doesn't exist, and this problem is the fact that people aren't educated properly. So what we have is an industry of cowboys. And because there isn't a certification scheme out there, well, there are some, but there aren't many of them. What it actually means is that people are self-certifying themselves. And while there are many people out there who have the knowledge and can do it properly and are very capable, there are also a lot of people out there who aren't. And there is evidence to support this, which is quite an interesting one. This is some data from the MBS National BIM Report. Hands up if you read this. Some of you, some very interesting things came out of this report if you looked at it. Apparently Vectorworks is the most used piece of BIM software, which I thought was very interesting. They must have had every single person from Vectorworks fill the survey in to do it. But there are issues aside. The one I want to focus on here is the 2014 levels of BIM that people are working at. As you can see on here, 99% of the people who filled in the survey, well, if you read the numbers, it adds up to 100%, so I'm not sure who counted it. But 99% of them are doing level 1 at the very least. When Tom showed his slides up, it showed that as part of level 1, you need to follow BS 1192-2007, because it talks about the structured data and using the common data environment. When we had Rob talk about it, he showed that 41% of people in Ireland are using that standard, which is great. Although these 99%, only 33% of them are using the standard. So you've got 99% of the people who filled in the survey say they're doing at least BIM level 1, 2, and some even doing level 3, but only a third of them are following the standard you need to follow to achieve level 1. And this shows you the danger that we've got in the industry. People using BIM wash, people talking about the fact that they can do things that they can't. Personally, I think it's a problem we've got in the industry where we're very kind of propaganda focused. Because we're so competitive, we need to show everyone that we're perfect and we can do everything. There's a tendency for us to kind of tweak the truth to say that we can do things that possibly we can't. Certification aims to solve this. The idea is that because we offer certification, we can give third-party assessment. We can validate from an unbiased point of view to tell you, yes, you can do it, or no, you can't. And it's actually proven it's starting to get fairly popular. We had a slow start, to be honest. I blame that on our poor marketing, because we're not very good at marketing at the BRE. But we're getting there, and people are latching onto the scheme. Competitors are showing up, which means I actually think we've got something pretty good going on. We have 2 schemes that we do through certification in BIM. The first one is our business system schemes, where you can be certified as a business. And then the second one is our certificated professional scheme, where you can be certified as an individual. First one, very quickly, is the business scheme. This is the one that Tom alluded to briefly. The idea that what we can do is we can offer you independent third-party assessments of your business. There's a yearly audit, and we are working towards UCAS accreditation at the moment. What it says in PAS 91 is if you have UCAS accreditation or equivalent, an equivalent being an organisation with design management capability and experience, BRE is one of those organisations as an equivalent. BRE Global has accreditation schemes through BREEAM and other aspects as well. So if you were to get our scheme, you can use that as evidence not to fill in the PQQs under PAS 91. And we're working closely with UCAS to get their accreditation when they have an accreditation scheme we can use. The way it works is that we look through a number of your details to go through and see if you've got the capability to follow PAS 1192. Rob talked about how important that standard is, and this certification scheme is focused wholly on that standard, where we look at how capable you are at doing all the intricate bits in it, depending on what kind of organisation you are, be it an employer, a lead supplier, or a member of a task team. You can find out more about it through the website. There's a quality plan you can download. I won't go into too much detail because we want to talk about the individual scheme, but the idea being that we look at how you train staff, what qualifications they have, what software you use, what documentation you have internally, case studies on your EIRs, BPs, and your common data environment, so you can demonstrate to us that you know how to use them and you can use them correctly, and we can go through the process and we can award you certification. The very first people to go through it were BDP, an architectural firm in the UK. They have had 1 office done. Since then, they've had another 2 offices done, so they've seen the value in the scheme and they're rolling it out across their organisation. And then in terms of contractors, we've also recently had Interserve join as well. Luckily for us, once one contractor has it, lots of others are interested in it, so we've been getting a lot of calls from competitors who are interested. And to be honest, the scheme can be quite rigorous. I go through a lot of the reviewing of the documents, and I've turned away half a dozen organisations who've submitted stuff and they're just not good enough. So it's not a question of you give us the money, we give you a badge. There is a legitimate audit system in there, and I have no problem turning you away and taking your money if you're not good enough. An advantage of it, other than being on PAS 91, is that we have a website where we provide a list of the people who are certified. So if you, as a client, are interested in finding someone who has third-party verification, once we've got a few more people on the list, it'll be a useful portal for you to find out who has been checked and who is self-certifying themselves. So there'll be a big advantage to that in there as well. So this is the business scheme. The focus of today, however, is the individual scheme, which is the one I was asked to talk about. And now, we also have, as I said, this certificated practitioner scheme. The idea being that it allows you as an individual to go through an assessment process to demonstrate that you are capable in all manners of things BIM. When Rob mentioned it, there were lots of different titles and responsibilities that you can have. It's not just about the information manager as such. There are different levels of responsibility, and our training scheme, our education scheme even, reflects that. So there are a number of different pathways that you can take on it. The way it was done, it was developed in partnership with Avanti. Part of Avanti is Mervyn Richards, who wrote the standards, so we're kind of getting it off the guy who wrote it. So it's not an interpretation, it's actually what was written and what the intent was as part of when it was written. As I said, the training scheme maps to our certification scheme, so simply by following our training schemes, you can then become certified by following that pathway. And it basically includes these levels. So there's a foundation level, which is our BIM accredited professional scheme. You then can follow that on then onto information management, which is either applicable for anyone interested in project information management, the information manager that we talked about, or the task information manager, which is a similar role but within the small task teams in your organisation. Rob briefly showed the diagram up there, the idea being that maybe as part of the employer or the contracting team, you might have a project information manager, someone who looks at it for the whole project, but each individual team, architects, engineers, especially consultants, should have a task information manager, someone who makes sure that the work that they're doing is appropriate for the project. So that kind of fits in there. And then we also have the project delivery manager, the PDM, which is a kind of individual who makes sure that the information deliverables are done on time and to standard. It's more of a project management BIM role as well, and we've got that incorporated in our scheme also. So through these 3 levels, there's quite a broad amount of information that you get out of it. Generally, you get to find out about the government requirements. These were mentioned very briefly then up here, but what it really goes into is the context. So we look at kind of the origins, where this come from. A lot of the work actually started in the 70s. It's quite interesting to find out that BS 1192 2007 was based on a document by CPI, which didn't do very well, based on a document that they did previously back in the 80s that didn't do very well. So the information has been out there for decades. It's just that not until it was made into a British standard that people actually started to listen. And it's been used on a lot of schemes. We talk about the benefits. So there are a number of case study examples that are in there. I won't go through them all because the idea is to go on the course. But a good example one was T5. When Heathrow, they used a single model environment there, and they estimated that they saved 10% on the project. So when you have something like that, that's £370 million odd. I have this kind of talk with Welsh Government because they are, like Ireland, haven't really got anything set up at the moment. I'm trying to talk about these ideas. I've been very kind of dejected at the fact that we've got a big M4 relief infrastructure kind of scheme going on and BIM isn't being used on it. I'm trying to tell them, well, you've got this kind of benefits you can use and you're not utilising it. But that's our problem, not yours. We talk about COBE, which is a very interesting one. It's something that people tend to kind of ignore. COBE is a very important one in the process as it's the only kind of standard non-graphical deliverable process that you can use. And the idea is that it can be used and incorporated into your CAFM system, so it's very much kind of asset manager kind of setup. Generally, and the one thing we try and convey on the courses is that the advantages for BIM is for operational phases, not for construction. You only construct for 2 years, but then you actually use your asset for 25, 50 years. So the advantages are really in there, and by having good asset information, that's how you manage that. So we talk about that through COBE. We go through the standards. Rob had a fair few of them up there, and obviously Tom mentioned them in his 7 steps. So we go through those standards, go through the particular details on it, and to basically walk you through how they're relevant and where they fit in the process. And although IFCs are not part of level 2, we also talk about them as good practice, because we at BRE, as part of Built in Smart, are big favours of interoperability. So we talk about IFCs, which is the data, IDMs, information delivery manuals, which is the process, and IFD, which is the data dictionary, which allows you to swap things through different languages. So we have a very broad brush of things that we talk about, and it's on the back of what we normally do through the academy, which has lots of training throughout the construction industry. This is basically the flow process for the courses. The idea is that right at the very top, there's no laser pens now. I'll point. I need to bring in presentations more often. Right at the start there, you've got a 2-day BIM AP training course. As part of those 2 days, you have an exam. So it's a 1.5-day course with an exam. At the end of the exam, you get to find out if you've passed or failed. I think we've had about 350 people do the first course. I think about 30 people have failed. So long as you kind of sit there, listen, and you're fine. But if you just kind of sit there, waltz through it, then you may be in a bit of trouble. And by doing that, you then are able to get from us a BIM accredited professional qualification. So at that point, you are a BIM AP, and you get like a little badge that can say that, but by no means at that point are you certified. Following that, it gives you an option then to go through the next stage. And the next stage is you can either do the 2-day BIM TIM course, which means that then by doing that, which is again a 1.5-day course with an exam, it means you can then become either a level 2 project information manager or task information manager, or you have the option of, after doing the 2 days, do a further 1 day to become a project delivery manager. So that's generally the way you can do it. There's no way of skipping the first course. You have to do the AP course to go through the other bits, and that's because what we're doing is we're providing certification through education. We're making sure that the right foundations are set up first, so that you build upon those on the other courses. The way that we've talked about it with a number of people is that you may know 90% of it, but if the 10% you don't know is something important for the other bits, it's really something we need to make sure that you have, and it's to do with the way that we've set our course up. I won't go through them all in great detail, as I'm conscious that we're only here for a morning, but the idea is that we'll go through a number of these requirements through the BIM AP course. Generally, it's a broad brush kind of basics of BIM, BIM awareness, what are the important things you need to know about BIM for those 2 days. Tom mentioned the OIR and the AIR, the organisational information requirements and the asset information requirements. They're covered in here when we talk about the EIR and the importance of information management. We talk about the Government Construction Strategy, which is the 2011 report that mandated BIM in the UK. We talk about all the different roles and responsibilities in the standard, which Rob showed you up on the table. So we're talking about very relevant things on where people are trying to get this idea of where they sit in BIM and what is required. The very kind of complicated diagram Tom went through, the information delivery cycle. We sit there and we spend quite a lot of time going through it stage by stage, looking at what are the key elements of each kind of stage of the project and where the BIM bits fit in. So looking at assessments and need, where you set the EIR up, set the contract award, we look at the BIM execution plan, how you form your model throughout construction, what happens at handover with the asset model. So we go through the cycle step by step, looking at what are the key aspects of the project. And we spend quite a lot of time looking at the common data environment, as it's a very key part of the process, and also touch on those CIC documents, looking at how it affects contract, insurance and PI. So as a very broad brush, it just gives you all the kind of the general feel of BIM and how it works. Following that then, you can go on to the BIM TIM course, the Project Information Manager or Task Information Manager. And what this does then is, this goes into more detail about what's going on. So we look particularly at the standards, methods and procedures that should be in place. We actually go through a demonstration of exactly how the common data environment would work. So it gives you examples of what would happen if things are accepted, rejected through the common data environment, whose responsibilities they are, how it works with the archive system. So it's a quite kind of practical demonstration of how it should work operationally. We talk about the difference between clash avoidance and clash detection. The idea being that if you have a good clash avoidance scheme, in theory, you don't need to do clash detection. We go through the digital plan of work, and we also cover discussion points such as who owns the data, how volume strategies work, and other aspects as well. So again, this one goes into a bit more detail about the more practical application of some of these processes so that they could be used throughout the scheme. Now, a few people have gone through the courses. One of the criticisms we do get sometimes is how broad, especially the first one is. My response to that is the reason we've done it is that we're following the government's outcome framework. So what they did was they set up a BIM learning outcome framework through the UK task group, and it covers, say, 35 odd points on what the UK wants people to learn about BIM and what they should have competency, awareness and understanding of. What we've done is we've sat down and we've mapped out all of the learning outcomes and ensured that by doing these courses you cover every single one of those requirements. And we're working closely with UCAS to make sure that that's understood, and that we kind of, when UCAS have a system where they can accredit training schemes, that we can be accredited in it. So we spend a lot of time making sure that we cover everything we need to cover, and we've made sure that we go to Mervyn at the source to find out exactly what should be in these courses and how it's done. I think that more or less takes me through what I wanted to show you. My presentations always tend to be short and sweet, so thank you for listening. And as a small aside, this is my first time in Dublin, so let me know anywhere I should go, because I'm here until the evening. So if you know somewhere good to go this afternoon, I'm happy to go have a look. Thank you.